Hi, welcome to today's video. My name is Paul. So today we're going to be painting this landscape that you can see. This is week 2 of this sort of soft pastel landscape painting challenge that I've given myself. It'll go on until towards the end of January. So I finished off last week saying that I need to work on skies and figure out how to make the sky look more natural. So that's really what I was trying to do this week. I did a couple of paintings and I messed around with one of last week's paintings. So the approach that I'm taking at the moment is to slowly build up layers and to blend the layers together. So you can see I put down some light blue and then a white on top of that, and then just using my hand to blend the colors together, and I just keep building up layer after layer. And this art spectrum paper, it's the same as last week. I'm using this art spectrum paper. It can handle quite a few layers, at least 4 or 5 layers, I think, as long as you work lightly. If you push the pastel really hard into the paper, you probably find you just get 1, maybe 2 layers at the most. What happens with the pastel is basically a pastel painting is just dust sitting on the surface or into the grain of the paper. And once the grain of the paper has filled up, that's it. You can't really put any more pastel on top of it. If you try, it just sort of skims across the surface. The paper that I'm using, this art spectrum paper, is a coated paper. So it's coated with an acrylic gesso that has a very porous surface once it's dried. And I think, as far as I can see at the moment, pastel papers come in 2 types. There are coated papers, maybe coated with some sort of acrylic like this art spectrum, or in some cases it's coated with sand. So it's basically a sandpaper, a very fine quality sandpaper. And then the other types of papers are just, they have a soft sort of felty surface, but they're not coated with anything. They're just paper. They tend to be cheaper, but also you can't build up layers the way you can with the coated papers. I think the coated papers allow you to create a more painterly style of pastel drawing or painting. The cheaper papers are maybe better for sketching than for final paintings. In terms of the colors I'm using are very similar to the sort of color palette I use in watercolor landscapes. I just like those colors, so I sort of stick with something similar. So these videos that I'm doing, and I'm putting up 1 video per week on a Saturday, showing my progress, or perhaps lack of progress with this challenge. And there's kind of 2 reasons why I'm doing it. First of all, for my own benefit, I'll be able to look back on this and see if I've made progress or not. And then the other thing is maybe as encouragement for other people, not necessarily to take up soft pastel painting, but if you're doing any sort of painting, let's say you're trying to learn watercolor or oil painting or acrylic or whatever it is that you're using, it can be difficult and it can be frustrating because sometimes the early results are not what we hope for. So I'm just putting these videos up to sort of encourage you. You can see that the paintings I'm producing are not fantastic. I'm hoping that they'll get better. But I wanted to show people that sometimes on YouTube and Instagram things, you only see the great results. You don't see the failures. And people are reluctant to put up their failures. So what I want to show you is people do make failures. Trust me, all of these great artists, they all make failures. and just to keep going. Failures are part of the learning process, so don't give up on art, I think is what I'm trying to say. Again, with the pastels, it's similar to the watercolor. I start with the sky, then do the middle ground, and then come to the foreground. And then in the foreground, I start adding in a bit more detail. And by detail, I just mean like lines and dots and things. I'm still using an impressionist style painting, so I'm not going overboard and drawing in actual blades of grass or leaves or anything like that. It's just all implied detail. So this is pretty much then the final painting. I was happy with the foreground. I'm happier with the sky. I think it looks a lot better than last week's skies. So I'll maybe continue this method or see if there's a better method. The one thing I don't like in this painting was the sort of middle right part of the land where it's sort of bluish. What I was trying to do is create the idea of, sometimes in summertime you get shadows on bits of the land because of the clouds, but I don't think it worked. This painting really didn't work. This is an example of a painting that failed. Part of the problem with this one was it was a dark surface. It was a black, again, it was the art spectrum paper, but it was really a black surface. And I've discovered I don't like working on the really dark. I prefer the lighter colors. But as I said, I'm not trying to hide problems or mistakes or failures with this series. I'm not putting myself forward as a great pastel painter. I'm putting myself forward as someone who's trying to learn pastel painting. Okay, if you'd like to subscribe, just click on the big red button below, and hopefully see you in the next video.